Hey there, it's Leslie at Leslie's Cookies and Treats, and today I'm making reindeer cookies. But did you know I also teach online cookie decorating classes? Join me this year and wow Santa with homemade holiday cookies. Following step-by-step video tutorials, you'll learn everything you need to know to make cute cookies just like these and have an unforgettable treat for Santa this year. Find out more details in the description. And back to our reindeer cookies. So I'm going to start out by using a brown royal icing in about a 15 to 20-second consistency. It's a little thicker than I usually use. And I'm just going to pipe his antlers on here. And I'll use my scribe to settle down any start or stop points. And then I'll move down to his face, and I'm just going to fill in his ears and his face. And this icing, as I said, is a little stiffer than I usually use. It's closer to a 20-second consistency. So I'm wiggling my piping bag as I'm flooding to help settle the icing down. And then I'm going to need to give it a good shake with my scribe so that it all settles down and becomes smooth. And I'm going to let that crust over for a while, so I'm going to move down to his shoes and outline and flood in the shoe. And then I'll use my scribe to settle that down and make sure that the icing is all the way down to the cookie so that I don't get a crater. And I want to let that dry before piping the rest of the shoes on the other side, so I'm going to come down and do the little black sole on this shoe and use my scribe to settle that down. And again, leaving the shoes time to dry, I'm going to move up here to the hat. By leaving areas of separation in between sections of icing, you allow them to dry and crust over so that they don't blend together when you pipe the section that's right next to it. So once I finish flooding in and using my scribe on this hat, I'm going to set the cookie aside to dry for 10 to 15 minutes. I'm going to put the cookie inside of a dehydrator, but you can also put it in front of a table fan. And once the icing is crusted over, I'm going to come back in and outline his body. I'm going to let the outline set up for a little bit because I want that line of icing between his legs to stay separated while I move back up here to the hat and outline and flood in the hat brim and the ball at the top of his head. Again, using my scribe to settle that icing down and make sure that it gets all the way down to the cookie instead of just sitting on top of the outline. And then I can move back down to the shoe and pipe the shoe on the other side and flood that in. And again, use my scribe to settle that icing down. And then I can go ahead and pipe in the sole of the shoe on the other side, and once again, using that scribe to settle that icing down. And then moving back up to his scarf, I'm just going to give him a green scarf, or maybe it's a collar, I'm not sure. This design is actually from Treasure Box Designs. It's a scrapbooking paper piecing company, and I bought the image and turned it into a cookie cutter, which is available on my website if you want to make these. So I actually let the cookie dry for quite a while, and now I'm coming back in with my red icing, and I'm going to put some sprinkles, just the kind you can get from the grocery store. And so I just sprinkled some on and shook off the excess. And now Rudolph has a big sparkly nose. And I'm just going to come in now and flood in the body, being careful not to go over that line in between his legs. And again, my brown icing is a little bit thick, so I'm going to have to wiggle my piping bag as I'm flooding in the cookie and then give it a good wiggle with my scribe to get it all to smooth out and settle down. And then I'm going to move back down to his shoe and do the top part of one of his shoes, and then I'm going to put this cookie back in front of a table fan or in the dehydrator to dry until it at least crusts over. So my cookie has been drying for a while, and now I'm just going to come back in and outline and flood in his sock on this one side, and then I'll use my scribe to shape it and make sure that that icing is all the way down to the cookie so it doesn't sink in later. And then I can pipe in the other top of his shoe on this other side, and again use my scribe to settle it down. And then I'm going to need to put the cookie back in front of a fan or in the dehydrator to dry until it crusts over one more time. And now that it's crusted over, I can come back in and flood in the rest of his sock. And I went a little bit over the other sock, so I'm just going to use a dampened paintbrush to kind of move that icing off of the first sock that we piped. And you want to make sure your paintbrush is just barely dampened, so you want to get it wet and then wipe all the water off on a paper towel. And then I'm going to put this cookie aside to dry completely. And once it dries completely, I'm going to come back in with my edible marker and give it some red stripes on the socks, making sure to get all the way around the sides. And then I'll grab my light green icing and just give it a little roughly border at the top of the sock. And I also want to give some texture to the top of the hat, so I just put a squiggle of icing down, and I'm using a paintbrush to just dab up and down on it to give it a fur-like texture. And then in another video, I made some present royal icing transfers. I'll leave a link to that in the description. And I just want to go in here and add some royal icing to the back and attach it to the front of my reindeer cookie. And then I'm going to pipe in some arms that's holding the present. So just going along the edge of the cookie here, I'm going to pipe in an arm with the brown icing on both sides and use my scribe once again to settle this icing down and to get it all the way up to the collar here. And then we'll repeat the process on the other side. And we're going to let these arms dry for a little while before we pipe the hooves on the bottom that are holding the present. So going back down to his shoes, I want to give him a little bit of a bow, so I'm just going to make 2 little bow loops, and then I'm going to take my scribe and actually draw a line through the center to make it look like a loop. To do this, you're going to want your icing to be a little bit stiffer, more of a detailed consistency, and then I can just go ahead and add some tails. And when you're working in little tiny spaces for little tiny bows, sometimes doing it this way is easier than trying to make an actual bow loop. And now that my hands or arms have dried a little bit and crusted over, I'm just going to go ahead and do 2 black hooves holding onto this present. So I'm actually going to go over the top of the present a little bit and then use my scribe to settle the icing down and to shape it to make sure it's nice and square. And then our little reindeer cookie is done. I love these tall cookies. The whole set is adorable. And again, the designs are from Treasure Box Designs, and I turned them into cookie cutters, which are available on my website. I hope you found this video enjoyable. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button so that you're notified. I have new video tutorials every day.